Hello everyone, it is Joe here from Omnipoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCGO codes, including the stuff from Lost Origin, make sure you check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your order using that code Omnipoke. For today's video, I'm going to be going over my Lost Origin buy list. Now, the set is already out, and you probably have already dodged the pre-release inflated pricing, so now is actually a good time to try and pick up some of the cards from the latest set. So let's start off with the core essentials. These cards are going to be ones that are expected to be involved in tier 1 or 2 contenders or have obvious future potential. We'll start off with the Lost Zone engine in the top left here. Comfey, Cram, and Colrus, as well as Mirage Gate. These all are going to be 4-ofs for me. They can be the face of a number of decks, actually. I feel like there will be a few viable one-prize builds of the Lost Zone engine with these combinations of cards. So you definitely want your Colrus and your Comfeys. If you want to have a budget option, it seems like a really strong budget deck to have in the game, honestly. And also, 2 Sableye, a great pickup here as well that could easily come into this sort of deck. Even if you're not playing the Mirage Gate build of the Cram deck, the Sableye is sort of a great mid to late game option to have in here. So yeah, really like this Lost Zone shenanigan stuff. I would pick up these guaranteed. If you want to go for the big shiny Giratina V-Star, I think a 3/3 line will suffice. I think you could easily see this as the face of a Lost Zone based build, taking full advantage of the Mirage Gate energy acceleration. But I could also foresee this being a card if you're someone that likes playing the likes of Arceus Flying Pikachu with the Bibarel engine. I feel like the Giratina could easily be replacing the Hisuian Decidueye that we saw at Worlds, because it has, again, an inbuilt shred attack similar to the Decidueye, and has that great number that it can swing with. You can even use double turbo energies to pay the cost of getting 2 energy into your Lost Zone as well. So great synergy there when you switch in and out of your Arceus. If you're able to tank a hit, you can Lost Impact some energies off an Arceus that's been damaged. Very good combination there as well. So even if you're not a believer of the Comfey Colrus engine, you may still want to pick up some Giratinas. Also in the Lost Zone stuff, Lost Vacuum could easily be coming into some of these decks as a 1 or 2 count, because you can remove some annoying health buff tools, and you can also get rid of some stadium cards if need be as well. Lost City, interestingly enough, is seeing the most play right now in Mew VMax out of all decks, because it can get rid of some annoying one-prize threats, or even get rid of a Drapion V that's down here as well as a key card to pick up from this set, because the Drapion is a clear counter to Mew, so you need to Lost City to make sure the Drapion cannot be recovered in certain situations, so that could easily be coming into some Mew VMax decks as well. But I would pick up 2 because it's a versatile, strong card that can punish a handful of decks in the format right now, those based around Radiant Zard heavily and such. So yeah, good card to pick up. We've also got the defensive side of things coming out of this set. The Hisuian Goodra V-Star seems to just have very good stats with that Rolling Iron plus Moisture Star combination, and I really like this as just a nice sort of tempo deck going on here. If you want to have some extra defensive tools, I would pick up some of these cards, certainly. Fantina's a big late game payoff for the Lost Zone engine, where you can reduce a ton of damage from V Pokemon. Radiant Gardevoir could easily go into the Goodra deck, although I prefer the Greninja. But I more so see the Gardevoir going into other decks, for example, Arceus-based builds, or possibly even some other tanking decks like Stonejourner. I could see Radiant Gardevoir being an include there for certain. And Lake Acuity, also a pretty solid stadium card. Water Energy are rife in the game right now. As we know, there's the Goodra that can use it. There's Arceus that uses Water Energy. There's Palkia that uses Water Energy. So just a very popular energy type to have. And offsetting a raw 280, for example, from a Giratina and a few other things right now, is pretty important, and forcing extra resources out of the opponent to bounce the stadium, etc. Seems reasonable for the likes of Arceus and Palkia, as well as possibly just making a Goodra tankier than ever, or a Stonejourner tankier than ever. So some interesting stuff there. I think a 3 of will probably suffice. In the bottom right here, we have the Hisuian Zoroark V-Star package. I know a lot of people are already hyped about this archetype. We've had some early results in online events with this already. The Zoroark definitely has some tempting damage output at its disposal. I'm going for the full 4/4 line of the Zoroark here, because you are very much a deck that likes to discard heavily with researchers, but also your own Phantom Star V-Star power. So things are a little bit out of your control, so maxing out these counts makes the most amount of sense to me. Damage Pump as well is essential for making sure your Ticking Curse comes off for maximum damage output, and the Gengar's a great synergistic card to pick up here, so you can pull it straight into play from the discard pile to make sure you're never missing out on KOs, and can also be a great combination card alongside the Pump as well. Then on the bottom left, we have the Kyurem V and VMax. I say a 2+ for this because it's probably just a bit part player alongside Palkia V-Star, but I do think this has a lot of potential to it. Similar to how we saw Ice Rider go alongside Palkia, I think the Kyurem can fulfill a very similar role here, where you have some extra acceleration at your disposal, so that you can keep your V-Star power around for longer with the Palkia, which is very appealing. You have massive one-hit KO potential into opposing VMax Pokemon, which was one of the only things that Palkia was really lacking at times. And yeah, seems to be just a solid card in general here as well, splitting up your typing, so you're not just wrecked by Flying Pikachu, etc. There's a lot to like about this Kyurem VMax. We have the Drapion V, I've already mentioned it when talking about Lost City. It's a great card to try and counter Mew VMAX. I could foresee it going into all sorts of decks, just as that tech includes, so definitely one for the binder. If ever Mew gets too popular, there could be certain tournaments where you feel like it's worth adding in your Drapion. Also, you can randomly punish like keep calling starts. If the opponent's just started a Sobble, gets one of their Vs down and goes wide with lots of Sobble, you can sometimes have big payoffs by gusting up their 2-prize Pokemon, slapping a choice bet on a Drapion and just KOing like a lone Palkia or a lone Arceus. It would be a real feels bad moment for them, but yeah, that's part of the reason why you like playing Drapion as well. Snorlax has impressed me massively. It's a very, very strong card. I've ended up putting it into my Giratina, as well as really enjoying it in some Mirage Gate 1-prize cram boxes as well. So really like this card. Annoying high hit points for opposing 1-prize attackers like Cramorant and like Inteleon, and hits that 180 damage threshold, which is really good at dealing with pretty much every 1-prize Pokemon out there. So it's a great 1-for-1 trader. It has really high hit points, and even that 180 can do enough onto Luminions and Bats and stuff like that, and easily set up 2-hit KOs, even with like a Cramorant coming in immediately afterwards into other 2-prize Pokemon. So the Lax has really impressed me. I still feel like it's a bit part player, and 1 or 2 copies should easily suffice alongside your Mirage Gate packages, or even some Twin Energy based builds of Inteleon Zard as well, where this is a great mid-game option when the Zard is a little bit too difficult to get going. Thornton, very interesting and powerful supporter card. Of course, there's some highlight reel moments with Regis, where you can steal that amazing acceleration and turn into a Radiant Zard, or turn into some of these amazing rare Pokemon. Alongside all those Aurora energies, you can do some very sneaky things. You can also create some complete 1-prize board states in certain decks, and then burst onto the scene with a V Pokemon that can evolve into a V-Star or V-Max that turn, and really change your board state. So it's a great way to sort of force an awkward prize map for the opponents, which I think is very powerful as well. Definitely seems like a card worthy of the binder, and I think 3 copies should be plenty. The Pidgeot V, if anyone's building around control right now, I would definitely foresee Pidgeot being a factor in their decision-making as an alternative to the Silene, Palpad, Yelchir package. So it's certainly one I will have for the binder, and I'm certain people are already getting cooking with some new faces of control, because this literally breaks the game. The Vanishing Wings means that you do not simply deck out eventually by drawing cards per turn, because you can constantly rebench the Pidgeot and put it back into your deck. So it's a anti-deck out strategy that you can have, which then allows you to use other things to go infinite and just bring resources back to the hand, rather than having to put them into the deck and then draw them all that turn. So it basically changes the way you can play control decks, and I think it's exactly a 1 copy, because you're going to play Hisuian Heavy Ball anyway in a control deck probably, or Peonia, one of those sorts of things. So 1 should be plenty, and this is definitely a card that just screams potential with an ability like that. There's all sorts you can do. Gift Energy, very cool card as well. I think it's very strong in some of these 1-prize decks where you can protect yourself from Roxanne and from Marnie. I think specifically strong in the Reggie deck that can pull this back over and over again, even if you just play 1 or 2 copies of the card. So yeah, really like seeing the Gift Energy. There are a few other 1-prize decks out there right now that could really take advantage of this. I know I've tried it in the Digong deck as well, just to top your hand up if you suffer a KO and such. So I feel like this has a big place in 1-prize decks right now. And any other decks that can recover energies as well, for example the Reggie deck or the Blissey deck, that could definitely take advantage of this card. Onto the Believer buy list then. These are cards that may prove themselves to be mid-tier contenders or have a good amount of potential for the future. We'll start in the top left with the Vs and V-Stars. A 2-2 line of Magnazone is kind of my lowest point. Similar to how we've seen Arceus take advantage of a Flying Pikachu package, you could easily foresee them going for a 2-2 Magnazone V-Star package. You still hit that great type coverage, and you're only a 2-prize Pokemon now as well, so it's not so easy of a prize map for the opponent if they do do have one-hit KO potential, especially if they play cards like Kieran VMax now, it would make using the Flying Pikachu that little bit more awkward, because a Palkia could easily take a 2-prize knockout, then knock out a Flying Pikachu, then just deal with a big barrel for game. Now having a Magnazone V-Star would make that prize map a little bit more difficult, so definitely an interesting card. It has the good type coverage if Palkia is still the top dog, which I assume that it still is actually. So yeah, I like this as a card to go alongside alongside Arceus more than anything else. But if you do want to go full into the Magnazone line, you can get a few more copies as well. Drapion V-Star is actually a low-key interesting one. If you're running a deck that plays Drapion V anyway, and you don't currently have a V-Star power usable to you, you could end up having a Hazard Star option. Pretty strong alongside a Marnie or a Roxanne, where you can just paralyze the opponent and put a few counters on them at the same time. It can bail you out of bad situations, especially if you're like a 2-hit KO deck. You could try and have a 1/1 line of the Drapion. I haven't tried it out too much. I think it would be stronger if you played a Thornton package as well, where you can just burst a Drapion out of nowhere rather than having it sit on the board as a liability. So it's something I want to try out, because Paralysis plus Stamp used to be a really strong combination. We saw that with Pikarom in the past. So having a Drapion option is low-key like not the worst thing I've thought of in the world. Delphox V, kind of interesting card. I think it's outclassed by other spread Mons in general, like Radiant Greninja and possibly even Amazing Rare Raikou. But I still feel like this just raw damage in general is like maybe enough to build around, and at least Delphox uses Fire Energy, which then leans into the likes of the Amazing Rare Reshiram and leads into the Radiant Zard as well. So the fact that this is exactly using Fire Energy is the only reason that I'm considering this card, even though it's outclassed by other 1 prizes. Then we have the very gimmicky Hisuian Electrode V deck with the Parasect line, the Hisuian Electrode, and the Wind-Up Arm. Radiant Sneasler is also like helpful for this poison package, but could be more useful in other poison decks as well. If you are going to lean into like a Galarian Wheezing deck, you could do with those extra damage counters. If you're going to lean into a Sneasler V deck as well with Butterfree, you could definitely use this card. I think it's still limited in its uses, so still a bit of a believer card, but one possibly worth picking up. There are some other interesting 1-prize decks in this set. The Hisuian Arcanine is worth picking up. Do not pick up the new Growlithe. Get the Growlithe from the previous set, because it has 10 more hit points and a better attack. And then we have... So yeah, this is a pretty strong card. Can be used alongside Zoroark as well, so maybe another reason to not get Growliths. But from what I've seen so far, it's good with Zoroark and also good on its own, so you still might want to pick up some of the basics as well, of course. The new age of Gramble, potentially. We have the Digong deck, which I have put a little bit of time into. I think it's actually quite bad from what I've tested so far. But if you want to have some fun, reaching some potentially very high damage output, you can go for it. As someone who's liked Rapid Mally in the past, I wanted to give this a go because it has similar vibes, but I don't think it's going to be competitive enough. But those are the counts I would go for if you want to experiment with the deck. We have the Hisuian Goodra with the annoying metal lodging ability, trying to protect some stuff with metal energy attached. I think there are some combos here, but I don't think we necessarily have enough strong cards that are just basics that can lead into this too much. And of course, we are really warping our deck quite a lot to fit in a stage 2 line as well, which makes me a little bit nervous. Spiritomb deck as well, maybe bullied out by some of these other 1-prize decks in the format, especially because we have such low hit point stuff that you can get punished by. Cramorant decks using a heavy line of Sableye, for example, and stuff like that does scare me. But there's a lot to like about Spiritomb's damage output attacking into other 2-prize Pokemon when you use it alongside Ditto, so I would pick up the copies just in case you want to try out that deck. If you are someone that's geared toward control, I think these are the ones that I would pick up alongside that Pidgeot. The Misfortune Sisters and the Galarian Stunfisk certainly could be good cards for the binder. The Banette is kind of the worst card coming out from the set that works alongside the Lost Zone engine, but could end up being enough if you are leaning into the likes of the Sableye or the likes of the Fantina. You might want to have a small package of the Banette in here as well. The main reason I'm not a big fan of this is just because having like Shuppet and Comfey on the board means you basically always need to have a Manaphy down as well, which just clogs up a lot of your board space, which is a little bit annoying. But the Banette can be a nice card to just guarantee boss in certain instances, or if you have other defensive cards like that Fantini, you can go for it. And then Arizu, again, I feel like you only need a couple copies of this card because it is limited in its uses, but it can get a handful of really interesting evolutions just all into hand at once. And if you are playing an Inteleon engine or something like that, you could easily foresee playing one copy of this card over maybe one of your Irida. I know Irida's more versatile, but the Arizu gives you just more value, more bang for your buck out of one supporter for a turn, because you can get a couple Drizzle and an Inteleon for the following, which is sometimes a lot better than just getting the Irida that gets you like one Drizzle plus net for the next turn or Incense for the next turn. So there are instances when the Arizu is a little bit more value. It's obviously for only non-rulebox Pokemon, so you have to make sure you're getting just other basic, just one prize stuff. Could also be interesting for the Zoroark deck as well. Maybe even the Hisuian Arcanine deck could try and use this card as well. I think I see a lot of bull guy action going on in Arcanine at the moment, but maybe there's some merit towards this card as well. So yeah, that wraps up the buy list. This is the Believer side and the Court Essentials once again. I think this is a very strong set, and what I really like about this set is we get a very mainstream budget deck in the Lost Zone Comfey Colorus Cram deck, and I think there's so much to explore in that. I think there's going to be like 3 or 4 different ways you could play the Cramorant, so it gives you a lot of replayability here. So really happy to see such a great budget option coming out from the set, and a few different things that we have being added to the game, where we have big one-hit KO options from Giratina and Zoroark in 2 very different ways. We have Goodra coming in as a new defensive deck in the game, which is pretty cool. We have that Kyurem helping out Palkia, so there's something for people who are already invested in Palkia. And yeah, I'm going to put a lot of time into these one prize decks for certain, because I think Mirage Gate opens up the doors for all sorts of creativity. Hope you did enjoy today's video and the buy list. A little bit of a shorter one today, but we will be back to more deck lists tomorrow, and a bit of foreshadowing. It's going to be the one prize Cram deck up next, and hopefully you've heard my passion about it today. So yeah, I look forward to seeing that tomorrow. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you there. Cheers.